Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this one of our first sessions for today, Experiences of Hate Crime by Corner Shop Business Owners in the United Kingdom by Dr. Tolulope Iboka, who is a senior lecturer in criminology at Kingston University. Her areas of research and expertise include criminalization, gender normativity, domestic and gang related violence, racial disparity, discrimination, and exclusion. Professor Iboka is a member of the British Society of Criminology and a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. I will give the floor now to Professor Iboka. Keep in mind that any questions, please add them in the Q&A window in Zoom, and we will do those questions at the end. But any questions, feel free to start putting them in, and we'll get to it at the end of the presentation. I give the floor now to Professor Iboka.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Please, can you hear me, just to be sure?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, brilliant. And I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, so good morning, everyone. And I think I'll also say good afternoon, depending on where you're listening from. I'm speaking from London, so it's, afternoon here. It's exactly 2 p.m. here. So I would say good afternoon for those who are within, where I am, or maybe those who are in Europe, or those who are in America, I would say good morning. So I will be talking about experiences of, hate crime by corner shop business owners here in the UK. Uh-oh. Trying to move my slides right now, and it appears not to be moving. I'm not sure why that is. Bear with me, please.
If all fails, you could try the escape key to go out of presentation mode and just manually
Okay, that's
shift.
true. No, don't do this. Okay. Okay, guys, I think I'm just going to stop sharing for a sec and see if I can get everything to come back the way it should. Okay, then I'm going to share all over again now. I'm going to say PowerPoint share. Okay, hopefully that works now. Oh, I'm still having. Not sure why this is. Okay, better. Apologies, everyone. That was a little bit of, technical glitch right there. Okay, so setting the stage. When we talk about, issues with, discriminations or issues with racism, I know it's something that is not, as popular as maybe as it might be, particularly comparing the UK and some other parts of the world. But a little bit of, setting the stage here would be telling you a little bit about what I mean by corner shop owners and who they might be. Corner shop is actually, I would say, the slang or the street way of calling convenience stores. As you can see in the image right there at the very top, these are convenience stores that are often by, little communities, towns, streets, just very close in various neighborhoods. So in the UK here, it's popularly known as the corner shop. And that's the reason why I am, I've referred to or I've termed it as that. So corner shop is the type of convenience store where people in the neighborhood could go in, to get their daily needs, essential commodities and all of that. Now, corner shop owners, corner shops actually play a very pivotal, a very important role in the community for the fact that they actually provide easily accessible goods, for, various communities. Also, it's important to highlight the kind of generation, the kind of revenue or, or I would say value added income that we have, from corner shop owners in the UK. As we can see on the screen right there, I have, highlighted that the corner shop owners actually generate over 10 billion, pounds, which is contributed to the UK, and approximately 8.7 billion in taxes to the UK economy. I mean, this is quite clear that they actually contribute not only, a great deal to the UK economy, but the fact that they also provide, great essentials to communities and various local, economy as well. Now, the South Asian demographic actually comprise individuals of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Iran, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Now, it's important to note here that most of these corner shop owners are particularly, handled by by individual from these ethnic groups. Now, South Asian corner shop owners as well. So when we say, they are popularly or majorly owned by people from South Asian demographic. So that means, on the other hand, that means we can actually say that South Asian corner shop owners actually contribute to the UK's economy, and they have continued to increase with annual, economic contributions, particularly which ranges between 25 billion to 32 billion. So considering this and considering all of their, immense contribution, not only to the UK economy, as well, to the communities where they are actually situated, I felt it is particularly important to understand their experiences, of either discrimination or either criticisms, particularly ever since, the COVID, the recent COVID-19 that the whole world, was open to. Now, despite all of these great contributions that I've just mentioned, economically and also to the communities, I felt it is important to actually understand what they experienced, or to sort of understand how they mitigated against whatever experiences in which they possibly must have had. Now, in relation to that, there are various studies that have been conducted in the UK, not particularly on corner shop owners, but on racism here in the UK. Now, racism, I would say, it's particularly entrenched, within UK communities and institutions, despite, various acts and various legislations that I'm sure also, exist in a large part of the world. Some of the examples of the articles, or some other authors and academics who have all written, in relation to racism here in the UK, are listed here on my screen. The first one would be Young, who sort of looked at, the Windrush scandal. I'm not sure how many of us are very familiar or followed, all the political news that went on in the UK in the past, I would say 5 or 6 years. So the Windrush scandal, was a very big one, and of course, which shows, a part of the discrimination, or I would say a marginalization that people who came into the UK, or people who migrated, into the UK during the Windrush, era actually, went through. So Young actually examined all of that and showing that actually racism does exist here in the UK. The next one would be Stuart Hall's theories that sort of looked at racialized policing, and that particular article was even much more echoed by Dan Weed, who sort of emphasized about moral panic, which is associated with migration here in the UK. You will agree with me that some of this moral panic is what has led to the Brexit, in which we experienced here in the UK, particularly in 2016. Another article is from Edologe and Lamy. In fact, Lamy's review of the criminal justice system in the UK is particularly, I think emphasizes the institutional racism in which we have with the criminal justice system, interestingly. And all of these persistent, I would say, systemic barriers of course, continues to encourage disparities, not only in the education system, in the employment system, and also with the criminal justice system. Now, interestingly, in the year ending March 2023, the police actually recorded 145,214 hate crimes in England and Wales. Now, I would say this number is particularly high, if we have at least 49%, of all of these hate crimes are sort of related, to racially or, religiously aggravated incidents. I would say this is a very large one, considering the fact that a lot of hate crimes and a lot of discriminations rarely get reported, there's very little reporting, possibly because people from ethnic minorities feel, even if I report, where is it going to lead to? Or possibly they really do not have that complete trust, with the criminal justice system. So if that particular issue is there, that there's lack of trust or little trust with the criminal justice system, and yet we have 49%, as recorded being hate crime or being, attributed to racially or religiously aggravated incidents, then I think that is a big one. Now, like I said earlier, there have been various studies on racism here in the UK. However, the experiences of corner shop owners within this context has been comparatively underrepresented in academic discourse, which means this particular study or this particular project in which I have, looked at appears to be, one of the first, study, particularly in academic discourse, that has been conducted. Now, a little bit of back argument or concept, or I would say not theories, but I would refer to this as relevant conceptual framework. Now, I've decided to discuss this so that you understand the findings of this study in respective or in relation to all of this conceptual framework. Of course, there are several other relevant conceptual frameworks that would be very relevant to the issue of racism. But I have decided to go with these four, being that these four are much more related to, the study in which I will be conducting, or to the findings, in which I'll be discussing. So the first one is colonial legacy. Now, if you recall in the previous slide, I spoke a little bit about Edo Lodge. So colonial legacy would mean modern forms of racism that are rooted in colonial histories. For those of us who are particularly familiar, with the British history, you will agree with me that there's a colonial history, which of course in some cases have produced some sort of power structures that we have presently in place in the UK. The next one here is whiteness. So whiteness would be white cultures and beliefs that operate as the standard. By that I mean, if for example, maybe we want to look at if it's be it education, or be it in the job place, or be it even in social lives, we find that some of us might have, if we are very conversant with the UK community, even with the rest part of the world, particularly in the Western part of the world, we will find out that the white culture and beliefs have always been used or have always been referred to, as the standard. And this particularly, clearly has been dictated to other parts of the world, which could possibly, for example, be Africa, Asia, seeing white culture, seeing those beliefs, seeing those practices, and seeing those ways of life as standard. And that is what we refer to as whiteness. The fact that that sort of Eurocentric, ideology exists, of course, I felt would be very important in this particular study. The next one there is in-group favoritism. Now, in-group favoritism would be, particularly was echoed, or I would say was coined by Tajfel in 1971. So in-group favoritism actually contributes to prejudice. That is when either a white person or either a black person or anyone from any type of ethnicity sort of favors people from their own ethnic group more than they would favor people who are not part of their own group. Or it might be, say, for example, we as academics, if you feel you favor people within the academic community more than you would favor somebody, say, for example, belonging to the banking industry, or say, for example, somebody belonging to the health industry. So in-group favoritism, of course, when it comes to the criminal justice system, in this case, is much more related to ethnic group and ethnicity. And it does, of course, contribute to prejudice, particularly if you have a police officer who is handling a particular situation, or you have a criminal justice, personnel who is meant to handle a particular situation, and they are not conscious of the bias they have. So knowingly or unknowingly, in some cases, they find themselves favoring or preferring to handle a case that involves people from a particular ethnic group even much more better than they would of another ethnic group. The last one there is intersectionality. Now, this is particularly, coined by Crenshaw, and of course, over the years, has been, echoed by various other academics and various other professionals and researchers. Now, intersectionality in this case, I will be limiting it to race and class, being that I am looking at South, South Asian, individuals who, of course, own corner shops in the communities. And why exactly have I put in class there? Now, the reason why I have, of course, included class is being that some of these shops are particularly common in working class, communities. They are particularly common in environment, or I would say suburbs. I would say in streets where you find people, from working class, where they are actually much more situated compared to where you find middle class. I think you really find some of these corner shop owners in some of these shops, some of these streets. So that's just one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I had limited intersectionality, of course, just to race and class. I will go to the next slide. Please feel free to stop me if you feel I'm going too fast, or maybe, put in your questions in the chat, and I believe I'll be able to get onto them as, after my presentation. Okay, for better understanding and to better be able to capture these people's experiences, I have sort of used for this study, I went with Denzin's framework of interpretive interactionism. And this is because I am interpretive interactionism is a very, suitable method that would help me to sort of capture the nuanced and varied experiences of individuals. I believe this particular method, because I've used it, in previous years, I've used it over various studies, and it has been very effective in acknowledging the importance of every participant's stories. Now, this particular data, or this study was constructed with 11 business owners, so 11 South Asian corner shop owners, using face-to-face interviews, particularly semi-structured interviews, and all of the participants offered invaluable insights, into their lived experiences, particularly during and after the COVID-19 issue. Now, for this particular study as well, I focused much more on Northamptonshire here in the UK, and that is because of the high rate of hate crime that has been recorded in the community. Now, also there on the screen there is the statistics that was recorded by the Northamptonshire Police regarding hate crime incidents. Now, there was actually a notable increase of 27.6% in hate crimes, particularly in 2018, which exceeded the national benchmark. So that sort of made Northamptonshire, a very, very suitable place to conduct this research. And, because I felt with such an increase that sort of exceeded the national benchmark, it sort of made it very, very suitable for for this particular, type of research. Also, 75% of these incidents were racially motivated and predominantly affecting members of the Black ethnic minorities. In terms of victims demographics, 27.7% were identified as Asian or Asian British, and white British, and white British, and 22% as Black or Black British. So in essence, all of this sort of, like I said earlier, made this context, it made that community, it made the Northamptonshire, region very suitable for this study. Now, to better target the particularly right group, I ensured to use, homogeneous and criterion sampling techniques, which particularly, once again, refers to, excuse me, which particularly refers to South Asian corner shop owners, particularly South Asians who own street corner shops, and specifically Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, and Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So right here is a biographical sketches of all of the participants, that took place in the study. As we can see, or like I said earlier, 11 of them, participated in this study. Just so you know, all of these names are not their actual names. These are all pseudonyms. And however, those are, what we have by the right-hand side in the box there are the relevant, biographical information of all of these corner shop owners. As we can see on there, the youngest on the list there is 35 years, and that particular individual has been in business for 8 years. We also have another person who is 40 years who had been in business for 6 years. Now, the highest person, the highest individual with loads of experience in this particular corner shop owners, had been in business for over 20 years, which makes all of this, once again, all of these participants suitable for this particular study. Now, I'm not going to take much of your time on this because I think I already explained a little bit on there when I was talking about the methods. Now, for the interview procedures, however, we did use, face-to-face semi-structured interviews, and all of these interviews were conducted in, in the preferred location of all of the corner shop owners. Most of them prefer to take the interview right there in their shops, which made it quite convenient for for them and also for the interviewers. So all of their interviews were particularly recorded, and it is important to note here that of the 11 participants, who took part in this particular research, 2 had formally reported incidents, incidents of either physical or, verbal abuse to law enforcement, enforcement agents. They also explained that they were provided with crime reference numbers allocated by the authorities for tracking the progress of their cases. 8 of the participants relayed experiences of verbal abuse, which of course provoked, intense emotional reactions, including anger, including frustration. However, it's important to note here that 1 participant out of the 11 actually disclosed that they have never been subjected to any form of racial prejudice. So out of, right here, out of the 11 who were interviewed, only 1 participant actually had not any form of experiences of, racial prejudice. But the other 10 had, various experiences which they related to the interviewer. Now, for better understanding as well, like I said earlier, I did use Denzin's interpretive interactionism. Again, like I said earlier, it was particularly chosen because it felt much more suitable in delving into sensitive topics, such as racism. And all of these, transcripts were independently coded, with the researcher actually scrutinizing, each line just to ensure that we got all of the nuances from, all of the experiences that were shared with us. Now, as we went on in the data analysis, it became almost repetitive. And what do I mean by that? For example, out of the 10 people who sort of shared their racialized, experiences, it appeared like most of them were repeating similar things. And, at that stage, For a sec, it almost appeared like the data would not be adequate. However, we sort of looked at the sample again, and of course, we placed it, by guess technique, of assessing data saturation. And for those of us who are particularly familiar with qualitative data, you will agree with me that qualitative data, though might not be, that large in numbers, it does in most cases, provide quality and detailed information that, that we could need to actually understand experiences or the patterns that, might be going on in communities where policies or some understandings or a situation, we are trying to assess. So in this case, 11 participants, or I would say 11 sample size, was actually found to actually suffice for this particular research. So now the results of this study. Analysis of the participants actually led to the creation of two typologies, like I said earlier. The first one would be verbal, discrimination, verbal racism, which of course, for example, would include racial slurs and derogatory, languages. And the second, type of abuse, of course, would be, that we found was the physical abuse, which, for example, was vandalism. Now, both of these categories were actually, I have grouped, all of these, both types of abuse together, just to allow a thorough contextualization of this act within all of the framework that I explained earlier. If you recall, I explained some relevant conceptual framework where I mentioned whiteness, where I mentioned in-group favoritism, where I mentioned intersectionality, and where I mentioned, colonial legacies. So I had to group, both types of abuse together, just to get a better understanding of what exactly is going on. Now, it's important for me to emphasize here that the participants' narrative actually disproves the myth of a post-racial British society, because, compared to the US or compared to, other European or other parts of the world, I think there's a sort of myth, or there's this argument, or there's this understanding that we have a post-racial British society. However, this particular study, or the finding, disproves the myth of a post-racial British society, thereby necessitating the need, to explore the impact of racism on individuals, potential entrepreneurs, and the community. And I have right here, provided some extracts. I have provided two extracts, actually. One, of course, this is the first one, which sort of, captures a verbal abuse that was experienced by Sheikh. Again, that is not the actual name of that community. I'm just going to leave that on the screen. I'm not going to read that. I'll just leave that for us all to, have a look, so that then I can go on. However, if we look closely at this particular extract, say, for example, the second line that says the customer got infuriated when I told her she couldn't pay by card for goods lower than 5,000. She used, the F word, and she told me, to go back to where I come from, telling me so many things. As we can see in this particular extract, if we are to use the lens, for example, the lens of colonial legacies, we can see that the customer right there felt, I would say, felt they were in a privileged, position to be able to impose whatever it is that they wanted in that particular, shop. They felt, even if the owner of the shop had said, well, you cannot buy goods lower than £5 with your card, they felt, possibly because they were white, their ethnicity, should be able to override the policies of the shop owners. Not only that, using the F word, of course, brings once again that colonial legacy, brings that hierarchy, brings that power, the power dynamic that we can actually see, playing right here. And again, the corner shop owner right there, at the ending said, it was quite upsetting for them. They felt they shouldn't be treated that way during the pandemic. And according to them, they felt very frustrated. And according to them, they said they wouldn't advise maybe any family, member of theirs to go into this line of business. If we recall, when I started this particular presentation, I explained the sort of, contribution, particularly I mentioned, the sort of economic, contributions of these people, of this group of business owners into the UK economy. So that sort of shows a little bit of threat or the possibility that such businesses or such shops, might start to close down, or, the continuity, I would say, for potential business owners, I would say, for potential entrepreneur, I would say is a little bit low. And if we look again at this particular extract, the customer's racial outburst, again reminds us, or sort of echoes the concept of in-group favoritism. If the customer actually said there, well, you need to go back to where you're coming from. You and your people are the reasons why we are in all of this. That shows in-group favoritism. That shows that hierarchy once again. That shows the power. That shows the feeling. The colonial legacy that has always been there, that is particularly enshrined in the community. We could see that coming off, there. And I think this again once shows that the post-racial British community that is possibly in some articles or in some findings is actually a myth. And that's the second one. The second one, clearly there is a physical abuse, again, within the conceptual framework. This particular one, if we look closely also again at the extract that we have right there, this corner shop owner's shop was vandalized. Yeah, it was vandalized. And we could hear right there. We can see it right there on the screen where the shop corner. The shop corner owner. The corner shop owner. I told the wife to call the police. Whilst he was trying to, calm the situation, and the son right there was crying. So we can see this sort of psychological, impact. We can see this sort of distressed, scene. Not only, were they vandalizing, the corner shop owners' goods, they also were using all of those. They used the N-word. They asked them to go back home. Again, if we look at all of this within conceptual framework, we can see evidence of not only colonial legacy, we can see the evidence of whiteness in all of this. The fact that all of these N-word, the fact that all of these derogatory, comments were being used, and again, the power imbalance that we can see there. Whatever it is that would make them to actually try to vandalize, the spot. The corner shop owners. But unfortunately as well, they destroyed some groceries, and they actually left before the arrival of the police. Now, the fact that they left before the arrival of the police, again, I would say sort of shows the fact that the criminal justice system, in this case, the police needs to, put more effort in providing security, in providing support, and in providing help for people from ethnic minorities. And in this case, corner shop owners. I think it's also important that I emphasize at this point that the fact that the little boy, was there to experience or to witness what actually happened, in that store on that day, and the wife, a whole family, the whole family experienced that. I mean, it just, goes on to show that that clearly, was a whole family experiencing a type of discrimination that clearly might take a long time, for them to forget such, horrible experiences, or even might go further to discourage, them in continuing in that type of business. Again, the goods that were lost, I mean, the loss to the goods, who is going to replace all of that? All of those things. I mean, this just shows that when we talk about racism, it does not just, affect, it might not just affect mentally or physically. It, of course, in some cases would affect economically, because in this case, we can see that, I mean, the participants there actually, lost some goods that were destroyed by the 6 boys who visited, I mean, their store on that particular day. Now, whilst I was trying to analyze all of those, I mean, those 2 extracts, I emphasized so much that those extracts sort of depict situations where individuals were subjected to racial abuse and aggression. It is also important that I emphasize that experiences of witnessing such aggression, of course, can lead to heightened sense of vulnerability and insecurity. I mean, for the fact that the police took time, I mean, they did not actually catch the, I mean, they were unable to apprehend, I mean, those culprits, just sort of brings a heightened sense of, vulnerability and insecurity for that particular family. And once again, of course, this in some cases could affect their overall well-being. Now, though most of the participants emphasize that racial discrimination against people from ethnic minorities is not new, repeated experiences can be detrimental, of course, to the victim's mental health. Now, I am emphasizing this because research shows, that people from ethnic minorities, particularly here in the UK, shows an overrepresentation, of people from ethnic minorities, particularly in health facilities. I mean, the report shows that, for example, Pakistani men in the UK are twice as likely to report a common mental disorder in comparison to their white counterparts. I am not saying everything is just limited to this, but this just sort of shows that, I mean, discrimination or any part of racism goes a long way to affect people. And if we have them in bits and pieces, whether in business places, whether in schools, whether in the health sector, anywhere it exists, it does have a detrimental impact, not only on economics, not only on their health, actually on the overall well-being of every individuals that are affected. Sorry, I just wanted to check. I thought I noticed something in the chat.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So sorry. I didn't realize that it came that long. Okay, I'll stop right now. Thank you.
Thank you for this great and important presentation that hopefully is going to continue being a topic of conversation. As you say, it's underrepresented in the academic discourse, but it's urgently needed. And we're thankful to researchers like you who are precisely working on these underrepresented societies, underrepresented issues that should be talked about more widely. And we hope that this presentation will lead to that. I'm afraid we don't have time for questions as we need to start the next session. But thank you very much, and we hope to see you in the next presentations.
Sure, I will be there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Just for video's sake, I'm just going to go through the slides that way so that people can, pick a little bit of some of those. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.